Honourable House Chairperson, members of this House, people of South Africa, when we talk about land reform, many people mistakenly think that we are only talking about agricultural land. It is, however, important to note that not everybody in South Africa wants to be a farmer. There are people that want to be doctors, teachers, some people want to be mechanics, other people want to be lawyers. Don't know why, but they do. The fact is that the one thing that all South Africans have got in common, Honourable House Chairperson, is that they do want to own the land that they live on. Rural development and land reform is arguably one of the most sensitive topics in our country, and if it is not handled correctly, it will have dire and long-lasting consequences for everyone in South Africa. The vision statement of the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Reform states that it wants vibrant, equitable and sustainable rural communities. Honourable House Chairperson, how can this be achieved when millions of hectares of land are still owned by the state instead of it being owned by the people who live and work on those areas? It is a shame that 28 years since the advent of democracy, those land areas are still in the name of the state and does not belong to the people that live on it. Successive ANC governments have promised to address the issue of land ownership in communal areas, but they have failed dismally to follow through on their promises. The problem with land reform is not the Constitution, nor is it the unwillingness of farmers to assist in making land reform a success. It is the corruption and poor governance inside the ANC that stands in the way of the successful implementation of land reform. Honourable House Chairperson, it is not only me and the DA that say this. This statement was also supported by the NDP as well as the high-level panel under the leadership of former President Kgalema Motlanthe, which stated that the Constitution was not the reason for the failure of land reform, but that the failures was due to poor implementation of policy, corruption, and a lack of urgency by this government. Now, Honourable House Chairperson, that is evident again today. In this debate, we do not have one member of cabinet taking part in this debate. Not one minister is here. They don't even attend this debate. Not one deputy minister is here. When the MEC of the Eastern Cape, Honourable Peters, addressed us, she did it from her car. How serious are the ANC to address these issues if this is the urgency with which they handle this? Due to this failure by the various ANC governments, the Democratic Alliance will shortly introduce the Land Justice Bill. This new private member's bill will be groundbreaking because it will empower the estimated 16 million people living on trust and state-owned land, as well as land reform beneficiaries, to decide for themselves if they would personally want ownership of the land they live on. This bill of the Democratic Alliance will, for the first time in the history of a democratic South Africa, enable at least 16 million people to truly get the most out of the land due to the fact that they will now own the land instead of being mere occupants thereof. To give an example, Honourable House Chair, of the potential that can be unearthed if one owns your property, we can look at what most commercial farmers do with their property. They give it as security in order to borrow money to invest in their property. They do capital investments in order to get better harvest on the land and to improve their herd's quality and quantities. A lot of homeowners use their homes as security for loans to do improvements on their homes. One of the problems that all these people that live and work on communal land have is that they cannot use that land as security in order to obtain capital to do improvements on that land. These land occupants are furthermore very reluctant to do capital investments on the state-owned land because very few people will do improvements and put money into something that does not belong to them and they do not own. This bill of the DA will enable people currently living on communal land to do improvements on their farms and homes with the knowledge that they are not improving the property that does not belong to them, but that they are improving their own property, and thus increasing the value of their personal estates, which they can in the future pass on to their children. This bill of the DA will also assure that the right of individuals to own their land will not affect any cultural rights and associations that these individuals want to exercise in their communities. Land does not have to belong to a trust or to the state in order for the people who live on that land to form part of their cultural and traditional structures. The Honorable Mtetwa gave a lot of figures. He reminded me of our former President, Jacob Zuma, when he gave his figures. But in listening to all the figures that you gave, it is important to note that a land audit must be done with urgency. There are no reliable figures reflecting the true state of land ownership in South Africa. Perception and emotions, rather than fact, drove policy formulation for far too long, and without a reliable land audit, it will continue to do so. Instead of changing our constitution to allow for the expropriation of commercial land and other properties without compensation, it is time to turn land holders who still live on land owned by the state into private land owners. Again, land holders must be turned into land owners. By stopping to treat people on communal and state-owned land as second-class citizens without the right to own the land they live on, we will improve food security, lower the unemployment rate and malnutrition figures, and at the same time create a sense of pride and humanity for these new landowners. The private members' bill that the DA is proposing in this regard will therefore create a win-win situation and will be a great step forward in the history of democratic South Africa. I thank you.
Thanks very much.